really focus a little bit more on the technique, cover the rod and reels that I'm going to fish those on a little bit more, and try to dive in hard, especially on that technique part of it, and really help educate you all on a way to catch fish out there this time of the year. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to our new and improved technique of the month. We asked last year kind of what you all wanted between the technique of the month and the pick two more is what we had done for 2023. But for 2024, we're going to kind of combine those two series, but really keeping that technique of the month. That seemed like the stronger video and people certainly like that. But basically just add in picking, this month it's two, next month it may be three, some months it may be one, but really picking, one more bait a lot of times at least to go with that technique, and really focus a little bit more on the technique, cover the rod and reels that I'm going to fish those on a little bit more, and try to dive in hard, especially on that technique part of it, and really help educate you all on a way to catch fish out there this time of the year. So, kind of a pattern that I expect to be working, as well as, kind of diving into exactly how you fish that once you're out there on the water. So that's what we're going to do for 2024, and pretty excited about that. Appreciate all the feedback that we got, and, I really enjoy reading those comments of people saying, how much that this has helped their fishing, or that they've taken something that I've said, go out on their body of water and able to catch fish doing it. And that's the reason we do this. That's the reason we spend so much time here trying to film stuff that is educational, wanting to be able to help you all go out there on the water and be successful. And that's if you're a novice angler just getting into it, if you're a student angler, high school, college angler, or whatever, or if you're an experienced angler and just want to try to learn something new or learn something a little bit different. So without further ado, for January, this is a month, a time of the year where I think we can be pretty universal in saying across the country that it's winter time. It doesn't matter if you're in Tennessee, if you're in Texas, if you're up north, you just got ice to deal with. So I don't know what to tell you up there. Drive south, I guess. But it's pretty much winter time all across the country at this point in time. But the technique I want to talk about really applies to more highland fisheries, the stuff that we've got here, in Tennessee, a lot of these type of places. Even Tennessee River lakes certainly play into this, and have a lot of places where you're able to do this. And some of those little bit flatter fisheries, you can still find some of the same kind of stuff when you have any type of channel swing bank. Something that gets a little bit steeper is where this particular technique is going to work. But what I've kind of called this one is fishing the steps, and fishing those banks that have those steps on them. Fish in the wintertime, they want places where they can change depth, pretty quickly, without having to swim a long distance. So a lot of times, in the hard winter like this, those big areas with a lot of flats and stuff, that's not where you're going to find fish that are relating to the bank. With forward-facing sonar, obviously now we're able to find fish that are out in those deeper flats and able to catch them with that kind of stuff. But if you're looking at fish that are bank related this time of the year, it's going to be on some type of a steeper bank. Bluffs, just vertical bluffs, can be really good this time of the year. But me personally, I like the ones that have those shelves or have those kind of steps off of them, because those ones that are straight up and down, the fish have to suspend. They can be up next to the bank, but regardless, they're still suspending. They can't actually be sitting on a piece of the bottom if it doesn't have some type of little step to it. And I always think those fish that are truly suspending are a little bit harder to catch. That's a fish that maybe you'd catch on an Alabama rig or something. But for fishing those steps, I really picked out two different baits. But one of them, pretty slow, and then the other one you're able to cover a little bit of water with. But a crankbait, and then a little hair jig, are the two that I picked out for this particular month. Let's start with the hair jig. That's one that is definitely I feel like I've talked about it on here a time or two before, but certainly an East Tennessee staple. Something that is hand tied. I mean, this is something that is not a mass-produced bait, but a little hand tied, and we call this a crawfish fly, or a little hair jig. But it's craft hair. I think this particular one is a 3/16 ounce, and that's supposed to imitate a little small young crawfish. You know, a lot of times for me this time of the year, I'm wanting a smaller bait, a smaller profile. You know, not a big, huge meal for those fish, because it's not that they won't eat a big meal, but it takes them so long to digest it that they're just not going to eat many big meals. But small meals, you know, a little snack here and there, you're just a lot more likely to get bites on. So that's why I tend to fish smaller baits as a whole when the water is really cold, because you're just more likely to get bit. And if you're getting bit in the wintertime, you've got a good chance of catching a big one. But that little crawfish fly, it's got just a little bit of darker craft hair on the back, a lot of that olive green, and then just a little bit of orange there on the bottom of it. But man, this little thing here, it catches a lot of fish in the wintertime. And it's a very simple bait and truly very simple to fish. So the actual way that I'm going to fish this thing, I'm going to have the boat sitting out, and my cast is going to be kind of at a 45-degree angle. I don't like throwing it straight at the bank, but I don't want to be throwing it, you know, straight out in front of the boat either. I like to kind of fish a 45 or 60-degree angle, throwing it in at the bank. And I'm going to have the boat sitting out a little bit. You know, I don't want to throw this thing as far as I possibly can and reach the bank, because I'm not going to fish it probably beyond, you know, 20 feet or so is about as deep as I'm usually going to fish it. If I just have a feeling those fish are a little deeper, maybe I'll try to fish it out to 25 or so. But if I'm keeping the boat in say 25 to 30 foot of water, I'm going to be sitting out there, and then I'm going to be throwing, like I said, a 45, 60-degree angle up the bank. And I want to land it up there pretty close. You know, 5 foot of water, 5 to 8 foot of water is kind of where I want that bait to land. I don't need it landing in that deep of water, but up there pretty close to the bank, 5 to 8 feet. Let it go to the bottom on a slack line. Okay, I want that initial drop I want it to get right straight down there to the bottom. And then it's going to be just a lift and a drop, because like I said, a lot of these banks that I'm fishing, they've got those steps on, you know, so it's pretty steep. Then it may have a little shelf, pretty steep, a little shelf. So you're wanting that bait to get down there quick, get on the bottom, and then you want to pick it up and that bait come up and then just slide off that next step. So to pull it up just enough to where you know it's off the bottom. And then I don't throw slack back at the bait, but I also don't hold it real tight to where in case that next step is out there ways that it's going to miss it and then just start swinging all the way to the boat. I'm going to lift it up, then just kind of ease the rod back down till I know that it's going to find that next step, and just kind of work its way off of each step, coming back down out towards deeper water. So really have that in mind of how that bank is shaped, that it's kind of stepping out there a little bit. Pick the bait up enough to where, you know, it's that high off the bottom, kind of like a little crawfish took off a little bit, and then it's coasting back down there towards the bottom. You don't want the up and straight back down, but you also don't want the up and then the pendulum way out there to you either. You want that up and then kind of coast back down a little bit is what you're trying to accomplish with that slight rod tip pull up, and then allowing that bait to kind of go back on a semi-slack line. So again, an 1/8 ounce, 3/16 ounce, that's pretty much the two sizes I carry in that. Very, very simple little bait, and a real simple technique as far as how to fish it. As far as the rod, reel, and line, I like at least a 6.5, but usually close to 7 foot. I fish it on a 6.9 carbon light a lot, honestly. That's what this little rod is here. And a 6.9 medium light is what I like for that thing, because it does have a very sharp little thin hook in it. You don't need a big beefy rod to get the hook in those fish with that technique. And that carbon light combo is just a great rod and reel combo. But light line with this deal, I use 10-pound braided line. Sometimes I'll even go down to 8-pound on my braided line. And then honestly, if you can stand to use 6-pound test as your leader, a 6-pound test leader will get you more bites on it. I typically, honestly, I fish 8 unless it's really bright bluebird skies, 0 wind whatsoever, and extremely clear water. I will go down to 6-pound test with it then. But you do get more bites with 6, I do think, on this particular technique. So it's one of those kind of deals. If you can stand it, if you like it, if you enjoy fishing with that light line, this is a technique absolutely to use it on. The other one is like I said, you know, a little crankbait. This one in particular is the newest member of the OG line. That's the Deep Tiny. So exact same body as our original tiny, but it has that larger bill in it. That little bit bigger bill will help this thing get 6 or 7 feet deep. So definitely going to fish this a little shallower than what that fly is. But that bait getting a little bit deeper, I'm able to fish, fish a few of those steps that come out up there in that little bit shallower water. So the biggest difference between fishing that crankbait and the fly is going to be my boat position. Okay, with the fly I was talking about, I'm sitting out making a 45 or maybe 60-degree cast in towards the bank. With deep tiny, I'm going to be slid in there considerably tighter. Like I said, it'll run 6 or 7 feet deep. I'm going to have the boat and 10 at the 10 most likely. If it's a real steep bank and I'm real close to the bank but still in 12 feet, I'll do that. But most of the time the boat's going to be in that 9, 10, 11 foot range, been in there pretty tight to the bank, and then I'm going to be making a much more parallel cast with that crankbait. So I want the bait to land up there in 3 foot. I think if you ask me one number, I would say I want that bait to land in 3. By the time I'm cranking it down, it's going to be on the bottom. Once that it's in 4 to maybe 5 feet of water, it's going to be on the bottom, and it's going to be on the bottom almost the whole retrieve back to the boat. Maybe the last quarter of the retrieve is when that bait is then going to be out over 7 or 8 feet of water before it turns and comes up to the boat. And sometimes that's where a lot of your bites are going to come from. I truly think that those fish may have followed it, got behind the bait halfway through the retrieve, but then you get it out there close to the boat and that bait turns and gets over open water and turns and starts coming up, that's when a lot of those fish actually bite. So if you start noticing that, all those bites are coming right at the boat where it's turning up, those also could be fish that are, sitting out just a hair deeper than what you're fishing. So either at that point in time, you've got a couple options. Either go with a bait that maybe runs a hair deeper, or drop down in line size to try to get the same bait a little bit deeper. Just kind of pay attention to where those bites are coming from and try to position your boat and your bait accordingly. For fishing deep tiny, for me, 12-pound test is kind of my go-to. But if I am trying to get as much depth as I possibly can out of it, I'll drop down to 10. 10-pound test fluorocarbon is a good size line to fish it on. You could go to 8 and get it down there even a little bit deeper. To me, every pound test I drop like that, from say 12 down to 10, I'm expecting to get a foot to 1.5 feet deeper with each pound test, and then the same distance cast. So the difference in going from 8 to 12, you're looking at probably a 2.5, 3 foot deeper is what you're going to end up, at least 2 feet to get that bait deeper. So it does definitely make a difference in just how much deeper you can get that bait. You'll notice it's funny with both of these that they are crawfish colors, and they're pretty similar crawfish colors. Of course, the root beer crawl on deep tiny there's got that little bit of a kind of a bone color to it that's not in that fly, but a lot of green, a little bit of brown, a little bit of orange. I just think that those fish like a kind of those last few meals, those last few opportunities they get a crawfish this time of the year. And truthfully, these are very similar size baits. If you look at just the body of the bait, they are very, very similar size. And for a crankbait, deep tiny has a pretty tight action to it too. So not a real aggressive bait when you're fishing in those cooler water temps you're going to be dealing with in January. That stuff from 50 on down is where that what you're going to be dealing with this time of the year. So definitely a good choice when you're fishing those kind of steps and stuff in those places where it's coming on down. Honestly, I'm going to get more bites, I think, on that crankbait on the day I've got some wind. If I've got a 5 or 10 mile an hour breeze, that's going to help that crankbait bite. If I've got a little bit of stain in the water, that's going to help that crankbait as well. For me, most of the time when I'm fishing that, and I say most of the time because the exception is going to be on a really windy day if I'm having to fish into the wind. But most of the time when I'm fishing deep tiny, same setup that I fish, the regular tiny on. It's a Bass Pro crank and stick. And for tiny, that's the one bait that I truly like, the medium action in that crank and stick. A little bit softer rod. The medium heavy is what I use for so much other stuff, but a 7-foot medium action in that crank and stick, again, just a little bit softer. I'm using 12-pound test line at the most, and something that I'm just able to pull that bait into those fish you know, a little bit softer with. The reel on there, it's a Bass Pro Platinum, 6/8 to 1 gear ratio. That's the setup. You know, I'm so comfortable with that speed reel on a crankbait for a bait casting setup that I can fish a bait really slow like I want to this time of the year. I can fish a bait, you know, pretty quick like I do in the summertime. But that setup definitely gets it done. And again, XPS fluorocarbon line, usually 12, occasionally 10. That's going to be my go-to on the line on those. So I'm trying to think of anything else to add kind of with fishing steps. And one point just to go back to again, truly is that boat positioning. With that fly sitting out a little bit where you're making those, you know, kind of quartering casts, that 45 to 60 degree angle cast, where with the crankbait you're pulling in there and you're making, you know, a cast that's nearly straight up the bank at that point. So, you know, really trying to get that bait out ahead of the boat more so then, and keeping it in that strike zone, just so you're more efficient with your time and with your cast on it. So yeah, I think that's it for this month. Yeah, get out there, bundle up well, wear you some Arctic Shield. Man, a good thing to do this time of the year, you know, with those layers on and stuff. Always keep that inflatable life jacket on. This is the time of the year that you don't want to end up in the water, and if you do, having that inflatable on can truly be the difference in you coming back home at the end of the day and not. And with a couple layers on, man, an inflatable, you won't even know that it's there. So this is definitely the time of year to make sure that you're being smart, make sure that you're being safe, bundle up, wear some good layers, get you some Aussie oak gloves. I wear those fingerless gloves this time of the year. They keep my hands really warm. I'm still able to tie knots. Got that Arctic Shield stuff layered up, and keep that Onyx inflatable on all day, because it just takes one misstep and then you're going to be wet, and you'll be thankful that you've got that life jacket on. So make sure you stay safe, get out there on the water this time of the year, fish those steps, try those two baits right there. I think you'll be catching some bass.